Alright, so I wanted to talk briefly about the differences in risk between being younger and older. I'm going to be looking at an injury I got while climbing outdoors and talking a little about injury and risk, because I think this is something that comes up for a lot of people in a lot of different spaces. Not just climbing, but all kinds of sports and activities have risks associated with them. Climbing is just a good proxy for a lot of these discussions that we'll get into today. So I don't have a lot of notes here. I'm going to be doing this off the top of my head because I think that can be a little more honest, especially in spaces when you're talking about injuries and things like that. So let's talk about how I was thinking about it in my 20s. You know, in my 20s, I didn't have a lot of money and bouldering was close by, and it didn't take that much money to get. You paid a couple $100 for some pads, and you paid some money for gas, sometimes entrance fees, and you were there. In most of the locations we went to, we could get there in 15 minutes, drop our pads down within another 15 and be climbing. So that was very convenient for me early on. In fact, I was doing outdoor rock before I was doing indoor, kind of a strange evolution. Not everybody does that. But the reason I say this is because back then, you know, I occasionally would roll an ankle here or there, but it never really got in the way. You know, which is interesting. I did a lot of jobs and, you know, I would get injured and be healed the next day and life was good. And I didn't really think about loss of work, but I think that's a reality for a lot of people, is that if you're going to be climbing and you get a severe injury, like, you know, I rolled my ankle, if you're doing a more physically demanding job, like you're a delivery driver or something along those lines, you know, warehouse, construction, etc., that you are going to be out of work potentially due to a sprained ankle, and that's not fun. So I'm fortunate it did not put me out of work, but this is something that's important as you get older, is to kind of weigh the risks of what you're dealing with. Now, can you sprain an ankle in the gym? Absolutely, and I'm not saying that you can't, but it's a lot more likely to happen when you're setting up your own pads outside. And also something that I look for when I go to gyms. I'm going to talk about if they have gaps in the pads, if they have moving pads, like some of the gyms I have gone to. Moving pads can be a real consideration for danger. So risk tolerance isn't just about outdoors, it's about indoors too, and looking at what you're climbing. The other thing I would say that is really important is I have to take into account how fast I heal. Again, when I was younger, I healed a lot faster. I'm in my late 30s now, and I don't heal as quick as I used to, so injuries like this can put me out a lot more. Right now that I'm talking about this, it has been exactly 1 week since the sprain, and we're going to be watching the video here in a little bit and talking about what happened, what went wrong. It is really important to emphasize, right, this is a week in and I still have a little bit of inflammation. I'm not even back to rehabilitating it yet. I hope I'm able to climb soon. Well, if you've been following the channel for a minute, then you've probably seen this is not my first injury by any stretch. In fact, I've had quite a slew of injuries. To a degree, it almost feels like every time I stop an injury, I get another one. You know, my pulley is just about healed up on my finger finally on this one. This one healed a few months ago, and it's been a lot. So what do I take from all this? Do I just keep going hard? Some people would. I've actually heard some people give that advice. You know, when you're starting to increase the load, increase the amount of exercise you're doing, you have to look at the whole picture. Now, it's no surprise that you see my watch is on me, and I chose to do that very purposefully because I realized, okay, left to my own devices, I tend to take on too much sometimes. I tend to go maybe a little too hard at things. And one of the nice things about the Garmin devices is they track your exercise load if you wear them consistently and track everything consistently. That's not easy, by the way. But I did that for a lot of what I've been doing, and it gave me a better picture of, whoa, 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 I'm going really, really hard. I think slowing that down a little bit and taking it gradually, taking increases gradually especially. When you're climbing, you have to be careful of that overall load. That was like an aha moment I had today of like, oh, this ankle thing is just indicative of a larger issue. Because I went to go do some pull-ups, at the gym, and thinking about that afterwards, I was getting a little tendonitis building up from that. I was like, ooh, okay, still a lot of exercise in my system, and maybe what I haven't done very well is rest. So I'm going to try to take it a little bit easy here, and hopefully I'll have some new videos out soon, but I'd like to be able to actually climb for those videos, so that means I have to do a good period of rest to make this whole thing work out. Alright, so I guess we got to sit down and actually watch the video, right, and see what I did right, what I did wrong, and get an idea of what happened. So I mean, immediately, decent feet, but the heels are kind of high. Once I get to here, I feel like the heel's really high. I mean, this is a decent slab, and it's got a nice little feature on it there that I could stand on, but again, making it kind of tricky. Let's, I know I fiddle around here a bunch. Alright, so I'm getting some good purchase up top, but those feet are really spread out. Obviously, that's not great. Alright, final part. This is the end. This is gonna hurt to rewatch. I have to rewatch this so many times in editing. You kind of get to know your own falls really, really well. Believe me, if you have not filmed yourself climbing, it will help you. Not in this case, but in others. Alright, see, I had 2 foot slips at the end, and here I was aiming, okay. So I was aiming to go down there, but I kind of turned. So let's look back through it here. See, what I can see already is that my left foot is kind of leading my right, and I'm kind of twisted out from the wall, which is a little unusual. I don't usually fall like that because that forces you to fall forward. I think where my head was at, I just want to mention, obviously, because there's this tree right here, and to go for the next move, this day was really foggy, so a lot of the holds, they had some kind of moss and lichen on them and stuff like that, and that can be slippery, especially with the fog. I mean, even some of the rocks were just kind of moist. So this top part is like a smooth slab, and I felt like my real options here were to like kind of ping between this teeny little tree and the wall, which definitely didn't sound like it was going to do me any favors, or to kind of turn and take the fall. Now looking back at it, yeah, I probably should have fallen backwards instead of trying to turn forwards into it, because I think if anything that actually exacerbates the issue of me like landing too hard into the ankle and bending it like almost too far that way. As I can kind of see here, I did land on the pad, right? Like I actually landed on the pad, but I notice here that both legs are kind of crossing almost. Yeah, I don't know. That's a really nasty position to fall in. And I bounced. If anybody's ever tried that before, like where you bounced into position, but I definitely felt it, and it was an interesting experience to say the least. What do I get from watching this aside from a twinge of pain and memory? There's definitely some things that I think I should not have done here, but I also have to take into account how I've been training. When we go into the gym, I down climb after I finish, so I don't have to take quite as big a fall on my back. That's actually informed a lot of things because, no matter how good at falling you are, there is some impact to the body. You're not reducing it to zero. You're just reducing the impact by having good falling form. Best falling form is don't fall, right? And I think down climbing obviously is not possible in most outdoor settings, but like in this one, there was actually a really nice down climb around the boulder. It's just you have to get through the top. And there's always going to be risks. So that's something to identify too, you know, even if the gym you're at has down climbers or not. But the thing to keep in mind is that if you don't practice taking falls occasionally, when you do get into a position like this, like for me, my brain kind of forgot how to take a tall fall for a minute there. And if it had been maybe a little more dialed from me practicing it more in the gym too, I think there would have been a little bit better outcome here. One of the things I'd really recommend, just background research on this, and we happen to have the copy here, is Push by Tommy Caldwell. So I just had to mention that because in that book, you know, Tommy is kind of reflecting on his whole career in a lot of ways and has a lot of great stories. Highly recommend it. But what I really found interesting were the items at the end. You know, there's this feeling of more responsibility towards family, friends, life outside of climbing, especially as you get older. Because there becomes a point at which you know, well, you're not going to be the top anymore. There is certainly some advantage to youth in climbing. Doesn't mean you can't be good, but you also have to balance and say what is right for your life. I think this is a very, very specific for different people. You know, some people are going to be much more comfortable doing this, you know, as their entire focus. That's pretty few people at the end of the day. Most people, climbing is just something that they do alongside many other aspects of their personality. I know it is for me. So, I mean, as much as this channel is focused on climbing quite a bit lately, because I've delved into that, and it still will, it's not going to be all that we cover, right? We can go a little bit wider than that. We can think a little bit further than that, even in terms of how it may help your climbing, just cross-training, doing other things like that. So, stick around. We'll have a lot more coming on that. All right, so what does recovery look like now? That's an interesting question, and I have to really ask myself, you know, am I ready to be going back hard? Today, I'm not. I'm just at the gym. We decided to come, and I'll do some kind of supplemental stuff that doesn't involve falling, essentially, and try to keep my strength up. I guess we'll see. You know, it's been a week since the injury happened, and you know, there's the smallest amount of inflammation. I really want to make sure that clears up before we get into anything more serious. There's a lot to think about as you get older, and that is something that I really want to talk about in this video. I've said this before, I've climbed for a long time. Let's talk about continuous climbing, right? Because I started climbing in the gym in about 2006. It's a decent amount of time, and obviously when I started, I was in my late teens, early 20s, and I had a lot different attitude about things back then. Injury was just a different discussion in that kind of time, and my ability to injure myself has increased over the years, right? Because, I mean, one, I'll be honest, I'm definitely a decent amount heavier than I was then. Some of that is muscle, some of it's not. So the thing is, as you get older, you really have to think about outdoor versus indoor and what the advantages are. Now, I know there's a lot of younger guys, and I said this when I was younger. In fact, I probably said this a couple weeks ago, that like real climbing is done on rock. And to a degree, I think that's accurate, but there's also a really well-known interview with Chris Sharma where he says anything where you pick your ass up off the ground counts. And I think there's a lot of truth to that as well, because ultimately outdoor climbing, you know, there's a lot higher logistics need. You're going to have the pads like I had in the video. You're going to have a spotter. You probably need a guidebook. Mountain Project's okay. I'm not saying that they're bad, but I found the guidebook just much better for me. It was easier for me to find my way around, figure out what I was doing, everything like that. And really, there's also the cost of gas and distance for some people. You know, there's going to be areas of the US where it takes more than half a day to get to a good climbing location, and those people are not going to be able to climb outdoors as frequently. It's just not going to be as part of their experience. Now, I would argue a lot of the best climbers out there definitely spend some time outdoors. But ultimately, I'm not one of the best climbers out there, never have claimed to be. And I want to make it about the fun. So this really has me asking some questions because, again, you know, injuries like this, it really makes me think about, like, what is the risk? And there is a risk indoor climbing too. I don't want to put that out there as there's not a risk. It's just different kinds of risks in different areas. So anyway, on the whole topic of whether it's real climbing or not, ideally, if you can get outdoors, I think that should be part of whatever your discipline is. For me personally, I think this is a wake-up call a little bit. I'm treating it as a wake-up call. Now, I'm curious what a lot of you have done in situations like this. I'll be talking more about my future direction in another video. But for now, let me know, like, what do you think you would do, you know, if you faced I'll say a minor injury, right? An ankle sprain is not exactly serious, but people have faced more severe injuries. I've had tendon injuries and things like that lately, and it makes you kind of wonder, what are you doing? So what have you done in circumstances like that? What is your advice to people out there? I want to hear more from this community because honestly, I think there's a lot of wisdom out there in people who are generally not commenting, but I want to give you a moment to just say, like, what it is that can help you keep going, what helps motivate people. All right, so now the big question is, like, what direction am I going to go in, and you know, what's coming next? So I have a lot of videos in the pipeline. Obviously, it's going to take some time to go through these. So I'll just kind of give you a quick summary of what's to come. So I have been gathering a lot of different chalk from different companies as I want to personally pick a chalk for myself. And that's probably going to need some help from some friends. So likely there's going to be a video on chalk coming up soon. I also have a video in the works to do multiple gyms in one day. There is a new gym opening up in the eastern part of the state, I think by Charlotte, that I'm hoping to catch them. And we still have a bunch more gyms throughout the state to go and a lot more adventures. So look forward to more. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't already. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you on the next one.